Now, he fought last summer. We had him signed for a fight that was going to be Thanksgiving. He's going to be on the Benavidez undercard. That fight was done. We were told everything is done, and the fighter pulled out. The fighter accepted it. So we would have seen Boots here at that point. Now then, going forward, then we were looking at seeing him on March 30th.
Okay.
Originally, there's going to be a Mario Barrios fight. Barrios asked for a little bit more time. We've got some things going on. And he said, fine. So we moved it to the May 4th undercard. Right. So then he said, okay, well, he had some bad luck. Didn't see Boots at Thanksgiving, but now we're getting him, which would be a great doubleheader. Now, there's another complicating factor which just came up. The IBF pops up and says, wait, slow it down. Let's hold the phone on Boots versus Barrios. Because Crowley's got something to say. So there's a negotiation there. Crowley's got a certain time frame that he's available on. There are certain rules and regulations that have to be followed for the IBF. So that put that fight on hold. So now between losing an opponent in November, agreeing on Barrios, then Barrios asking for a little bit more time, committing, then the IBF pops up. That's going to delay things further. Then we're talking about a purse bid negotiation, a potential purse bid, and it's been a series of events. And in the middle of this, don't forget, his promoter passes away, in Cameron Duncan, which created a little bit of uncertainty as well. So if you look at all this and say, well, it's not that Boots doesn't want to fight. Everybody who's spoken to Boots knows that one thing that he likes, he fights, as often as possible. Even if it's for less money, he just wants to be active. Now, there have been obstacles which have been in the way. No fault of his or anybody. Nobody saw it coming that his promoter passes away. The IBF popped up out of the blue with a mandatory order. We've got a couple fights that he's got opponents which pull out. And, we're sitting there and he's going on. Having said that, having been on phone with this team, regularly over the last week, I think we're very, very close to resolution of that. And I think we'll be seeing him, in the early summer.
Do you have to overpay Ennis's opponents to get them in the ring with him?
In general, yes, and that's been the case for a few years. And I get it. He's looked pretty unbeatable. So, we got to overpay for guys to go in there. Now, not the case with Mario Barrios, and that's one thing I respect. And if you know Mario has never hesitated to fight anybody, and he never hesitated. He never said, hey, I got to go overpaid if I'm going to fight Boots. Barrios stepped up and took the fight right away, which is a rarity. So that's why we were so excited. Now, I'm not saying that fight is never going to happen, but I think that's a fantastic matchup. And, I hope we see it in the near future. But, in the meantime, yes, as a rule, most people are paying, are getting paid far more than they usually get because of they're willing to fight Boots.
Did you guys send Crawford an offer to fight JARON Ennis?
There was a lot of conversations. It's not really the way the business works. Like you don't. Everyone's like, well, it was an offer sent. You don't sort of. There are people who do this, and it's not very effective. But you don't just, out of the blue, find a guy, send him a cold email saying, hey, you want to take this fight? No, it's a conversation. It's like, okay, what do you want to do next? Terrence, you want to do this, you want to do that, what's the plan? I got a call, and there's been so much misinformation about this. BLK calls one day, says, we want to do Crawford versus Boots. I said, okay, you got to deal with Crawford. I know what Boots' plans are, and I can make arrangements to facilitate that. So you're telling me you're bringing Crawford to the table? No, we don't actually have Crawford. I'm like, okay, well, what are you paying? You're not bringing Crawford, so you're bringing money. No, we just want the fight to happen. I'm like, all right. So basically, you're a guy off the street calling me cold and saying, I'd like to see this fight. Then I talked to Crawford. Crawford says, I don't have anything with BLK. You don't need to talk to them. If you want to make a Boots fight, talk to me. you know what? Okay, talk to you. Now this all happened, against the backdrop of we were still in the Spence negotiation.
Gotcha.
So it wasn't really a time to be saying, okay, like I'm not going to do that to ERROL. ERROL had given all of us specific instructions. I don't want anything other than Crawford fight. So I'm not going to go in and try to stick boots in. We were 80% there. So it didn't even make sense to talk about Crawford. We talked to Crawford's team and said, okay, down the line we'll talk about boots. But at that particular time, he said, no. He's like, don't worry about BOK. We're going to talk to Boots. Like, you can facilitate, Boots. You can talk to both sides and, figure that out. So that's where that whole thing ended up. Like, Boots didn't turn down an offer. There wasn't a BLK offer that anybody blew up. And neither did Crawford run away from an offer. It just, the timing wasn't right. He said, okay, well, why didn't you offer, Boots to Crawford after that? Well, there's a rematch option, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then until pretty recently, everyone thought the rematch was going to happen.
Right.
So, look, certainly, Crawford knows that there's a potential for the Boots fight, and he's looking around. He's going to decide what he wants to do.